Good evening, this is Yeon Kim, your mentor to discover Korea beyond the media. Do you watch the trailer I recommend? I bet now you know Korea has a sad contemporary history. Korea was invaded by Imperial Japan and eventually it becomes its colony for 35 years. After independence, Korea has its domestic war, Korean War, and elite separate Korea into two countries. After Korean War, it also has dictatorships. Korean common peoples were suffer from its brutalities by dictatorships for decades. However, finally, Korean common people won democracies, societies. I know it is impossible to summarize Korean contemporary history into 20 minutes, but I will do my best for you. Let's start. Han is the concept of emotion. It could be grief, it could be sorrow, pain, which can't be solved simply. Korea has a history of victims by imperialism in modern time. That is why this emotion Han rose to climax during this contemporary period, and now it becomes the main concept of Korean modern history. In 18th century, Joseon government prosecute numerous Christians, included foreign missionaries, to prevent foreign religions from Western countries. However, Joseon accepted the new science and technology from Westerns through the Shilhak scholar who study practical matters. Although there are many movements to reform Joseon societies, Joseon was falling behind the world by its national isolation policy. For imperial countries, Joseon was quite tempting target. Expansionist imperial states attempt to open Joseon's door by force since the middle of 19th century. The first attempt to open its door was by American merchants in 1866. In the same year, French government also sent its troops to revenge for prosecuted French missionary by Joseon government. In 1876, Joseon eventually had to remove its isolation policy by Imperial Japan. Can you guess the mystical background of Mr. Sunshine, the TV show I recommend? Mr. Sunshine was dealing with political issue in the era of Korean Empire. In 1897, King Gojong officially changed national name from Joseon to Korean Empire. Korean Empire is still the first and last monarchical states in Korean history. Korean Empire also tried to make the national reforms in general. First of all, the reform aimed to improve civil rights and modernize the national overall systems from administration, education, military, economy to the land. However, this reform was too much dependent on foreign capitals. Also, it was strategically interrupted by Imperial Japan. After Russo-Japanese War, The power of Imperial Japan was getting bigger in Asia. It also was accepted by other imperialistic countries through the war, so it openly revealed its desire to make colonies. Korea was its first target. The Korean Empire eventually became Japanese protectorate in 1906. In the end, Korean Empire disappeared in history by Korean-Japan annexation treaty of 1910. The Imperial Japanese invasion of Korea was planned even before Japan-Korean Treaty of 1876. Imperial Japan made steps to occupy Korea gradually. First of all, it extorted the Koreans' independence, diplomatic rights, and financial independence. Also, Imperial Japanese military even assassinated Joseon's queen, as known as Queen Min, in 1895. In 1910, Imperial Japan eventually took over all authorities in Korea by annexation treaty. Imperial Japan insists on that they had the same policies in Korea and Japan. However, it was a huge lie. Their policy in the colony was different from domestic policy. For example, its policy in colonies was the policy of assimilation, and it aimed to obliterate Korean culture and ethnic. Firstly, it prohibited teaching Korean language and Korean history in the school like before. Secondly, it forced Korean people to change their name to Japanese way. If there are any Korean who disagree with this policy, the Imperial Japan government treat them unfairly. There was also discriminatory policy to make a Korean as their second citizens. The Imperial Japanese government considered national education important, but the purpose of the national education in colony Korea was to increase their loyalty for Imperial Japan and their emperor. That was the reason why Korea could not have the opportunity for higher education, such as university. However, because there was many complaints and indirect attack by independence activists who hate the unfair educational system, Imperial Japan had to establish a university in Korea in 1924. Imperial Japan participated in several wars: Pacific War, the Second Sino-Japanese War, and World War II. Through this war, Imperial Japanese brutality was getting worse. Nowadays, we can easily find the evidence of Japanese atrocities during this war because of the remaining record and testimonies. There was a special Japanese military troops named Unit 731. This troop is specialized for human experimentation. This unit literally treats human beings as their experimental guinea pigs for biological warfare. Imperial Japanese military was also accused of numerous massacres during the war. Nanjing Massacre in China is one of their massacres. Its military also killed war prisoners. About this story, you can watch the film directed by Angelina Jolie, and its title is Unbroken. It released 2014. Also, Imperial Japan forcibly mobilized people from their colonies for warfare labor. To make matters worse, Imperial Japan forcibly recruited or kidnapped women and girls to make them sex slaves for Imperial Japanese military. You can also find related footage which is released recently by Seoul National University Human Rights Center. Korean people uprose against Imperial Japan's brutal policy in colonial Korea. Especially, righteous army fought against the Imperial Japanese government actively. They built several military schools near the Korean borders to train independent activists. And they also assassinated high-rank Japanese officers of imperial government. Not only men, but also women were involved in independent movement. They also organized many demonstrations in colonial Korea and gathered money for independent activist group. If you want to know about the female independent activists in Korea, please check the link at the right bottom of this slide. After Imperial Japan finally lost to the USA in Pacific War, Korea was able to gain independence in 1945 due to this independent movement effort, such as countless resistance from Koreans by various methods against Imperial Japan. Even after August 15, 1945, Korea couldn't stand itself 100% because of the power game between the USA and Soviet Union. Because both of them want to have an influence on the peninsula, they decide to divide Korea into two parts, North and South. The Soviet civil administration occupied the northern parts of peninsula, and the United States Army military government occupied the southern part of peninsula. No matter what excuse they made for occupations, it was just the conflict between two ideologies, communism and democracy. Also, it triggered the terrible Korean War in the end. Korean War is not a domestic war, but an international war. International military from 74 different countries participates in this war in direct or direct way to support their ideological allies. This is why some war historians refer to this war as the World War III. The Republic of Korea's government was founded in 1948 after the United States Army military government in Korea was dismissed. Since the Republic of Korea was officially established, it represents itself as a democratic country, but this democracy was threatened several times by some rulers who sought to monopolize power. Finally, all people in Korea desire a democratic country. People learn power of commanders, righteous armies in colonial period and Korean War. Finally, the civil demonstrations movement made the dictator resign or impeached. The people's power for a better democratic world still works constantly in Korean society. Korea also had remarkable economic growth since the 1960s, and this situation was named as Miracle on the Han River. However, it is not just a miracle. Korean government sent its troops to Vietnam and dispatched its miners and nurses to Western Germany to get financial support from advanced countries. Korean government also focused on the building major infrastructures such as Gyeongbu Expressway. Korean government also kept fostering heavy industries and technological business. On the other hand, the rapid economic growth caused the human rights issues for labor such as overworking and dehumanizations. Nowadays, there are still heavy conflicts among the people in Korea with many issues. However, I wish Koreans will achieve a compromise soon for a better Korean society. Okay, today we scanned contemporary history of Korea. How was it? It's quite complicated and also it contains many historical events. How is your country's contemporary history? Please don't forget to make a comment in the classroom. Next week, we will have midterm test. The test will have 25 quiz from previous and these classes. So next class will be on February 9th. Next class, we're gonna deal with Korean politics. It's kind of hot potato in Korea, but we will talk about Koreans' grassroots democracies and how it works in Korean society. To understand Korean politics, please watch one documentaries and one news. The first one is documentary made by the Korean Center for Investigative Journalism. It illustrates how Korean people, grassroots democracies, finally made their corrupted politicians punished. However, the documentary is in Korean, so if you don't have time, I also recommend to watch BBC News because it also summarizes how Korean peoples impeached their corrupted presidents. Okay, have a nice day and see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.